How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Hello, dead pooligans, Wolverfiends, Gigante Beans, and Penwings. I'm Cher McAnelly, semi-pro question asker and series watcher.
And I'm Lauren Shippen, professional writer and aspiring universe completionist.
And this is Dashboard Diaries, a podcast for you, the folks who are in this internet bunker with us. We talk about what's going on our favorite hell site, get into what we like to call Tumblr, do fandom deep dives, and share the times when we've gone feral over a new ship. So, Lauren, what has your last month on Tumblr been like?
It's been interesting, right? It's so funny. I feel, for whatever reason, I feel like we recorded our last episode like a week ago, even though it's been like a month. It's just,
right?
It's just like what a month it's been, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
we've lived so many years and yet it has gone by so quickly.
Truly, truly. I have both been spending a lot of time on Tumblr and also like no time on social media at all. Like I was traveling at the end of October and that was really crazy. And then, you know, the first week of November was what it was. I think like a lot of other people are sort of stepping away from social media.
Yeah.
So I haven't been super, super active. That said, I did immediately go diving into the Penguin tag after the season finale, which we're going to get into. And then also, I'm going to get into this later in my feels corner, Dr. Odyssey. I've really been enjoying Dr. Odyssey. I don't know if you're watching the show at all.
I am not watching this, but, I really enjoyed The Penguin at your recommendation.
Good.
So
good. Okay.
We'll have to check this out too. Yeah.
Dr. Odyssey is the opposite of The Penguin in many, many ways. I do have a lot of feelings about it, but just also in general, the Tumblr tag is very, very good. So I highly recommend going into the Tumblr tag because people are having a very good time with it. And then also on my own personal Tumblr, the laurenshippen.tumblr.com, I had a little invited questions from folks about making audio drama and stuff because I want to be more like active again in the audio drama community, and I've been having fun kind of like getting back into that and like catching up with some folks and stuff. And I had like a Zoom hangout with a bunch of audio drama folks last week, and it was really fun because we hadn't spoken to each other in like any kind of real capacity in like months and months and months and months and months, and we're usually kind of like hanging around the WJ Discord or like emailing each other or whatever. And this was the first time that like I saw a lot of these people sort of face to face in a while. And a bunch of them were like joining Tumblr for the first time, which is just really exciting.
Oh, that's so great.
Because
I'd love to hear that.
Because Twitter is Twitter, and, obviously like Blue Sky is starting to kick up again and things like that. Everybody's kind of navigating what social media looks like. And I think for audio drama especially, which is, the main thing that I do, Tumblr has always been the place that the listeners have been and that, the community has been in part. But I think for a lot of other audio drama creators who, like, unlike me, have not been on Tumblr since they were like 17, it's been a little intimidating. But I think that people are now getting into it in a fun way. So that was really encouraging. And I'm excited to kind of see the audio drama community get a little bit more active again on Tumblr.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. How about you, Cher? I mean, this was your first month on Tumblr as a user.
Yeah, it was also definitely, as you said earlier, an interesting month overall. I would say in general, I have been staying off social media overall across the board. Yeah. And except for going into sometimes like subreddits of things or shows that I'm watching, generally things that don't have a community on Tumblr that I watch, which is all my slew of reality shows that that I tend to follow that don't really hit on Tumblr, but always have like in-depth episode discussions. But I haven't really been on Tumblr. One thing which, I was going to throw it in my feels corner and is definitely like a moment of vulnerability, but we're all friends here. We've been, chatting and everyone's been listening for 40 plus episodes. So this was the first month, as you mentioned, I was not working at Tumblr. And I, as, a Tumblr employee, was a member of, I want to say, a dozen of official Tumblr blogs.
Yeah.
Our entertainment account, our staff account, all of these different, like the fandom. And obviously, after you leave Tumblr, when you're no longer a member of those official blogs.
They don't let you post anymore.
And, yeah. And like at first, like there was like a couple days, where, there was a lag as everything was, and I was still in those blogs. And I just like, obviously I couldn't post, but it just like felt nice to be in them. And I checked the other day and I was no longer in those official blogs. I knew it was coming, but I was like, oh man, like I'm just a user now. I don't have my admin privileges, but it's, it's been so like I mainly dove into the tag to prep for this episode. So I was really enjoying the content around, especially Agatha. I feel like it just aligns so well with like the vibe of the show is so Tumblr.
Totally.
So, and especially, Catherine Hahn and like Aubrey Plaza. Like it's just everything about it. So just, the content has been incredible and so funny, especially the, Tumblr posts which has been a big trend as it is with, most series that hit on Tumblr. But yeah, so it's been a good last month, an interesting month, and unrelated to Tumblr, but I will be posting on Tumblr about it, so kind of related to Tumblr. I decided to book a last minute trip to Japan.
I love this for you.
I leave tomorrow.
It's so crazy.
I'm excited. Speaking of posting on Tumblr, by the way, my first question is a follow-up that because you mentioned earlier that you were taking some questions. You were getting questions from people about audio drama. So I'd love to know if you could share what your favorite question was or one that maybe surprised you the most before we dive into our archives.
That is such a good question. And I literally am going to have to go to my own blog to see which questions, because this was like last week. Oh, yeah, I think so. Actually, one question that came up, this is like the one of the last questions I answered sort of a lot about writing and things like that. And if you go to my Tumblr, you can just go to my master post, which is pinned at the top, and click on Lauren Answers Things, and you'll see all this stuff. So yeah, there were lots of questions about like writing process and rewriting and drafts and what would you go back and change? What have you learned from mistakes that you've made? Things like that, which were all great. But then I got a question about how much of an impact has writing and consuming fan fiction had in your career? Which is something that I hadn't really thought directly about. And the answer I gave was that, well, for reading fan fiction, I've been doing that since 2006. Bones fanfic was like the first thing that I ever read fanfic for. And I was a very active fanfic reader and commenter on fanfiction.net, because this was pre-AO3 by like several years. And I think for me, the thing that reading fanfiction has really done is give me permission to think of writing as anything and to think of storytelling as anything. Like I think about the two fandoms that I was most active reading in as a like 20-something, when I was also like starting to write my own original work in a serious way, were Sherlock fandom and Marvel, specifically Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And I think that like there are some Winter Soldier fics that I like have gone back to time and time again, because they do so many interesting things with like prose style and with format and with like telling a story in a sort of deconstructed way. The third book that I wrote was a story told entirely through diary entries, Reddit posts, Tumblr posts, and letters. And like that feels like something that like, yes, exists certainly in mainstream fiction quite a bit. But I think that just like growing up sort of reading fan fiction really had like a positive impact on like what I imagined as writing a book or writing prose. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of, I started writing fan fiction in I wrote this down in the answer, I think 2017, 2018. And that taught me how to write in other people's universes in a way that I think is incredibly useful, because that's also now something that I do professionally, right? Like I wrote a show for Marvel. I wrote a show for Stranger Things for Netflix. Like I had to learn how to work in other people's universes and like mimic the like speaking style of a character like Robin Buckley, right? Who like is an established character, or, Reed Richards or whoever else. And so I think that that's something that writing fanfic has really done for me. The other thing that is like so useful in writing fanfic is that like a couple years ago, I got into a new fandom and went completely bonkers on writing fanfic and wrote about 250,000 words of fanfiction in a year, which is the equivalent to like 2 or 3 books.
It's like an Odyssey.
Yeah, like my longest book to date that's published is my 3rd book, and I think that was 117,000 words. So like this was significantly, more. And I think like writing fan fiction taught me how to like write a lot very, very quickly, and also to not be precious about a first draft, right? Because I think one of the things I really love about writing fan fiction is that I do it anonymously and I do it for the love of the game. And so it's like the things that I publish do not have to be perfect, because people are just happy to have more, especially because I tend to write in very small fandoms. Like people are just like happy for more content, right? And so like it's okay if it's a little sloppy. It's okay if I kind of like take shortcuts here and there. And I think that skill as a professional writer is so, so necessary to be able to just like spit out a terrible first draft is crucial to getting anything done, because it's so much, you can't edit a blank page, right? You just have to get that first draft out. I've been rambling for so long about fan fiction, but I thought that was like an interesting question. And I think, in terms of what we're talking about today as our main topic, like so much of storytelling these days is existing within these larger universes, that learning how to operate within an existing universe, I think actually like is a useful skill as somebody who wants to be a professional writer in like mainstream art, whether it's like scripted stuff for comics or whatever else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, the titles that we're talking about today, which are, the Penguin and Agatha All Along spin-offs, like character-driven spin-offs, are essentially sanctioned fan fiction.
Oh, totally.
If you really look at them like that. And so, yeah, and I know that this is just veering away from the episode, but now I'm really interested to know, were any of the storylines that you created in your fan fiction work, or structures or little things, did anything make it into the official work that you did for Marvel or for Stranger Things?
I mean, that's interesting, because I've never actually written fan fiction for Marvel or for Stranger Things. Actually.
Oh, okay. So the Winter Soldier, you were
I was just reading
it, but you didn't.
Okay. That's actually not entirely true. I technically have written one fic that involves Bucky Barnes, but Bucky Barnes was not a character that I was writing in Marvels. Mm-hmm. And that was like like a very, very short fic, just kind of like a character study type thing. But I've never actually written in either of those universes. And in general, I do try to stay away from potentially even like I've read a lot of Marvel fan fiction, but like I've never read any Stranger Things fan fiction, which in part because like weirdly enough, like I was always a fan of Stranger Things, but writing the Stranger Things show that I wrote like turned me into like a super fan. Like, you go really deep in on a character and you just like kind of become obsessed with it. And I like rewatched the first season a million times, because that's when the podcast takes place, and then just to kind of like align everything in my head. And so it's like I wasn't really inclined to read fan fiction before writing that podcast. And then since then, I'm like, I'm always like, well, I would love for Netflix to come knocking on my door again and ask me to do another Stranger Things podcast. And so I'm not going to read any fic, because like if there's even the slightest chance that I could potentially end up working in that like plot line, I think things like what we're talking about today, Marvel, DC, I think that those are a little bit different, because they're so far reaching and because there's not really a true canon. But for something like Stranger Things, or like I'm trying to think of the other shows that I love, actually like even like something like Star Wars, it's I would love to write for Star Wars someday, but like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily want to read a ton of fan. Like I have dabbled in Star Wars fan fiction, but I don't know that I'd want to read a ton of it, because it's like I wouldn't want it to then affect if I actually got a hand on any of those characters that I was working with. And it's like kind of the same. It's like very similar to the effect that happens of like, I used to read supernatural fan fiction and now I don't, because I know Misha Collins. And it's like there's just like a certain level that you get to, or like a stage that you get to with certain works, or with certain like, one of my good friends writes on Stranger Things, like where reading fic for it just becomes like it's very hard to separate them out in my mind, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, 100%. I feel the same. Every show or film or musician project that I've worked on, it changes it, whether I've done an interview for it or I just worked on a digital campaign for it, whatever it is, it impacts, if I like, took me so long to watch the Barbie movie because I did a huge like launch for it and ended up we like launched like a Tumblr for it and did this whole campaign, and the amount of time and energy and work, I was just like, I'm not ready to look at this. And so the same, I think, with interviews, and like, especially when I've interviewed people who like, like Misha, for example, have worked with him for like over the years, or once I've like consistently worked with people, the POV or the angle or the way in which you're a fan of the show changes.
Completely.
It's from like, I'm a fan who's a fan because I love this work, and I'm not, I'm connected to it because of the love of the work. And then when you're connected by knowing someone or it's more like, I'm a fan and I like respect the work that's being done here. And I like, it definitely kind of changes the way that you view it. I definitely feel that in pretty much, anything I've touched like in any way or worked on, I feel like I can no longer view it as a pure fan, which is, it's definitely a double-edged sword of like working in fandom and working around the things that you love so much.
Completely.
I've even sometimes felt kind of a little bit of, and I think I can admit this now that I don't work at Tumblr anymore, when campaigns have fallen through, something hasn't worked out, an interview, whatever it is, for a big title or someone that I really respect, or I'm both excited and like, I'm excited for it to happen, but when it doesn't, if something doesn't happen, if something, for whatever reason, there's always a little bit of relief because I get to stay separated from whatever that is and just view it as a fan.
No, that's so real. Yeah, like this is, people for years and years and years, like once, I was living in LA and I was making podcasts and podcasts started to get paid attention to by like larger Hollywood studios and stuff. So I was having a lot of these meetings with like these bigger studios who were interested in making podcasts, and they were like, well, eventually you want to move over to TV, right? And I was like, no, I don't. I'm not a visual person. Like, I really like working in audio. And also like, I want to keep my TV. Like, I already have so many friends who work in television, and there's so many shows that I watch where it's like, I can see the seams of the thing. And sometimes that is like a wonderful thing, right? Like getting it's like getting to write for Stranger Things, for the Stranger Things universe, made me a bigger fan of that show, right? But sometimes it like is distracting, right? When you're like, oh, like I know the person who wrote this episode, or like, oh, I know the person who was the first AD on this thing, or like whatever else. And it's like, and you hear stories about people, and like, sometimes those things are like, oh my God, it's so great that person is really cool, and then sometimes it's not that. And so it's like, I don't want to be more involved in TV than I already am tangentially next to TV being made, because I love watching TV so much, and like, I don't really need it taken away from me.
Yeah, could not agree more.
Yeah.
It is so nice to like have it just stay your comfort thing, and just the thing you enjoy, which working on it anyway, like there's no way to not change it if you aren't, connected to it. Speaking of franchises, the topic of today's episode is two of the biggest franchise creators or universes. We're talking about DC and Marvel, of course. Today's focuses are The Penguin, which is a DC spin-off series, obviously, about DC's The Penguin in the Batman universe on HBO, and then Agatha All Along, which is a spinoff about Agatha Harkness, the witch who you may remember from WandaVision, which is on Disney+. So, two fun shows, two big fandoms. I know, Lauren, that you are a big fan of The Penguin. Have you seen Agatha All Along as well?
I have. Well, I was going to say, have you seen all episodes of both of these shows?
I have.
Okay.
Have you?
I have as well. So we should probably say this is going to be spoiler full. If you don't want to be spoiled for either of these shows, bookmark this and come back to it once you've watched them.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about? Like, what's sort of your relationship to both of these shows?
Well, I binge watched both in the past week.
Nice.
So I am sure that upon a rewatch, there will be a lot of details that I catch again. Look forward to that. But my relationship to both, I would say I have a solid baseline familiarity with both the DC and Marvel universes. I've seen all of the Batmen, all of the Dark Knights, the films. I haven't seen a lot of like the cartoons in both, but I've seen most of the Marvel spinoff series. I loved WandaVision. And I really, enjoyed Catherine Hahn's character. So just overall, both of these shows were shows that I was yeah, excited to watch. Very much enjoyed going into the universes of. For the listeners who might not be familiar with both of these shows, could you give us a quick TLDR of the plot?
Totally, yeah. So starting with Agatha All Along, that is about, as you said, Agatha Harkness, this witch who was basically put under the spell by Wanda, the Scarlet Witch from the larger MCU. And the story kind of begins with her still trapped in this spell. And then this young man comes to her and is like, I want to travel the Witch's Road, which is this sort of rumored thing that witches can access. And if they walk it and pass the trials, they can sort of like ask for something. And Agatha has had her magic stripped away from her. So she's like, okay, let's gather a coven of people to go and walk the Witch's Road. And then I'm going to get my power back. And it's very much, Agatha's very much a villain, and it is very much her sort of manipulating and being shady with these other witches. And there's the mystery of like who this young man is and like what he's looking for and why he came to Agatha. And each episode's sort of like a different trial and focuses on, on a different character. There's this whole coven of witches. And there's like a very, very toxic queer lady romance at the center of it, which I just love. Yeah, those are sort of the highlights, I would say.
Yep. And I love the, like, I think, was this the first, like, queer romance that we've gotten from a Disney series?
Well, I was gonna say, like, for any of you who haven't, like, dipped into the MCU in a while, like, when I say like a toxic queer lady romance, like, I mean that very literally. Like, they're explicitly ex-lovers. Mm-hmm. They kiss. They were explicitly like in love. Like, it is not being like cute or coy. It is not the first time that we've seen queer characters in the MCU. But I think that I'm trying to remember if this is like the first like queer kiss that we've had in the MCU.
Because I think it might be.
It might be.
And just, with the toxic, witchy, like queer lesbian romance, I was like, it was leaps and bounds forward. And I just, love the representation, frankly.
Yes. Agreed. Well, and so what did you think about, speaking of the toxic Yuri, what did you think about the way that the show ended? Because it's been kind of not controversial, but I think that I've seen mixed sentiment from viewers.
Yeah, I think maybe I wish there was a little bit more redemption from the Agatha side of things, or just like in general. But I think I was pretty ambivalent about it. I was like, okay, that's how that ended. Like, we'll, I maybe not predictable, but when it ended the way it did, I'm trying hard not to be spoiled. When it ended the way it did, I very much was like,
I think we are spoiling. Like, we're
when
we can talk about whatever.
They were essentially like, all right, let's go get the other twin. Like, I was like, that tracks. Like, that, I thought it was expected, maybe a little predictable, but not any. What have folks not liked about the ending that you've been noticing, and what are your thoughts about it as well?
I think that like, this conversation around like representation specifically in these large franchises, I think is a really interesting one. And I saw some people, and I don't think this was like a majority of people necessarily. I haven't done like any significant research into this, but I did see some people being frustrated with the fact that, and major spoilers for the end of Agatha All Along, that Agatha dies, and that like, people, I think, were feeling a little bit like it was a barrier gaze thing. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with that particular trope, barrier gaze is sort of this like toxic trend, toxic not in the fun way, of narratives in TV and film where the, queer couple is sort of torn apart because one or both of them die. And there have been some, sort of like meta, not studies necessarily, but sort of looking at like the number of characters who die in TV shows, and queer women disproportionately die in terms of percentages. So like, I understand. I think that this show's a really good example, actually, of like how these things are so important contextually, because yes, killing queer women off is like a significant problem that TV and film have had for the last 70 years, right? Mm-hmm. Agatha was in love with literal death. Like,
Yeah.
her girlfriend was literally death. And she also lived for hundreds of years in which she murdered a bunch of ladies to get their witch powers. And so, like, for me, her dying, I agree, like the ending, like, I think I was ambivalent on parts of it. And I think that, you know, parts of it were predictable. But I think in terms of like her and oh my God, Rio is Death's name. Like, Agatha and Rio kind of like having this final boss battle, and then it ending with Agatha sort of sacrificing herself for this, you know, for William. I think people sort of saw as like, oh my God, like another queer woman dying in service of a white man's story. And it's like, I think you're missing the forest for the trees here. Like, I think that you are caught up in like, yes, this thing is true, and also that doesn't mean that like queer people can't die in stories. Like, I still think that that's something that like can and should happen. And I think for the narrative that they were telling in this particular show, like, it made perfect sense to me that she died. Like, I didn't take issue with that particular thing, nor did I like expect them to necessarily like ride off into the sunset together as lovers. Like, that was clearly not the story that they were telling. And I really liked the queer story of it, because I thought that it was like showing, like interesting toxic exes, you know? And it's like, queer people also have toxic exes.
Yep.
So I liked that part of it.
And we've talked about that in past episodes, right? Of like, you know, such an important part of representation is just telling everyone's story, like from all walks of life and all orientations and abilities and experiences, and just telling an honest story, and that being representation. So sometimes the person who is queer dies if that's where the story is going. You know what I mean? And I think, the awareness of, you know, the fact that, burying your gays is a trope because it was and is something that consistently happens. It, you know, we can be aware of that, and also say in this case, I didn't see it that way as well. I agree. And also, I mean, this is just, you know, MCU semantics thing, but you know, when you die in the MCU, how often do you really die? I mean, it's so rare that you like, they have to be like, no, seriously, this one's dead. Like, and Agatha immediately was back as a ghost who could like touch and do things, and she died, and death is death. Like, how are you telling me that they can't, you know, resolve their differences in, you know, the planes of being?
Totally.
You know, there's no way. You know,
Totally.
like, I feel like there. So even in this case, I was like, well, this doesn't even feel like it applies. You know, because this movie doesn't follow the rules of, I don't know, physics and logic and reason.
Yeah, there used to be a sayings in like sort of the Marvel fandom that was like the only two characters that always stay dead are Uncle Ben and Bucky Barnes. And then in like 2010, they were like, well, what if Bucky Barnes wasn't dead anymore? So it's like
we're waiting on Uncle Ben to come back.
So like truly, like, like this is not the end for Agatha Harkness, I don't think. And I mean, in terms of like the larger franchise stuff, I think one of the things that's interesting about both of these series is the ways in which that they like fit into both their existing franchises and also like sentiment around franchises at the moment. And so like as somebody who like it, you know, does watch Marvel stuff, like I'm trying to think about the best way to phrase this question. How do you feel Agatha sort of fits into the larger Marvel franchise in terms of like I think that we can all agree that Marvel's had kind of a hard time the last couple of years, and they have been branching out and trying new things, but I think that there's a feeling that like they haven't quite clicked into like their new tent poles yet, and that they, you know, haven't gotten people quite as excited about stuff as they did in the past. Where are you in your sort of MCU journey at the moment now that you've seen this show? Has it changed at all? Has it not changed?
I think yes and no. I think I'm kind of in the middle there, because I think it's definitely changed my POV of the MCU, and the fact that I was, as we were talking about earlier, really excited to see this like on-screen queer romance, how it's like at the forefront, and it's not, you know, it's not hinted at, it's so blatant, and like, you know, so, you know, with the leads of the show, like I liked that a lot, and I think that was key. I liked the way the way that the show is formatted with the, each episode being around a different character and around a different challenge on the road felt a little meh, like kind of done to me. And like, it was just, like as soon as I kind of saw like the pattern that they were going with, I was like, oh, okay, I see where we're going with it. Like, it was like, I enjoyed it. It was a fun like show. It was fun to watch. I think WandaVision was a show where I was like, oh, this is, the MCU really getting creative and like testing things out. And I noticed that they did a lot of things that they tried out with WandaVision, they tried again or like continued or, iterated on for Agatha All Along, which I enjoyed, but also felt like, again, oh, okay, we're just going to get like, this is just the new thing that we do, which I kind of felt the same about Deadpool versus Wolverine.
Yeah.
I just, I was watching it like the breaking of the fourth wall and the winking at like the joking about Disney and like the kind of nods to fanfic and like the winks at the cat. Like I very much I saw it coming and I was like, oh, I know this is a joke, but it's just, yeah, I think I agree that, Marvel and like the kind of MC, like they're in this time of change and trying to figure out, like, I feel like they are a little lost and I could feel that. I like Agatha. She doesn't feel like a tentpole character. And yeah. And so that's kind of, where I am in the Marvel of things. And then on the DC side, I think, DC who tends to be like kind of historically the opposite in terms of hit or miss. Marvel is usually like everything is like, this is the biggest opening, all of the Avengers, like they tend to, whereas DC it's like, oh, this one's good. Yeah. I think kind of like with the Penguin, especially like this changed my view of DC and I was like, okay, this is getting into like really prestige, like which always like, I feel like the Batman, like Gotham universe has been that gritty prestige, like the Dark Knights are some of like the best, superhero or kind of like, action adventure, that genre of film. So I'm not surprised that it continued, like that vibe continued really successfully in the Penguin. But I mean, I feel like the Penguin was like Emmy, like easily Emmy quality. Like these are just,
yes,
like these are career making performances. Like they're just unbelievably high caliber and incredible like prestige performances. Whereas Agatha was like, oh, this is a fun, cute show. And yeah, so I think I kind of see DC surging ahead in terms of the quality of the series, which I think there are also a lot of characters in the DC universe that we have not met yet we have met but haven't explored more, whereas I feel like the MCU is kind of like, oh my gosh, who else do we have that we can make something about?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, how about you? What have your thoughts been on these two shows, on these universes? What's your relationship with them and like, the kind of comics in general or
I mean, like, I think I very much share your sentiment. And I think that, like I fully was unwell about like Captain America, the Winter Soldier and sort of that whole phase of the MCU. Like, and like Marvel's like a huge part of my life. Like I wrote this Marvel show. That's where I met my partner. Like he was working at Marvel at the time. And like, so like we see everything. Like the only movies that we saw during the pandemic were the Marvel movies that came out. We like went to the drive-in an hour away and like saw, like whatever Marvel movie was out, like at the drive-in, and because it was socially distanced and it was safe to be in our own car. So yeah, I've been like a pretty dedicated MCU watcher. And I think that, and I've seen pretty much every Marvel show with the exception of we didn't finish Secret Invasion. And I think that, there's a couple of other things that like felt a little bit more like chores versus like actually being excited about it. And like, I remember when WandaVision came out, I was like, ooh, yeah, okay, this is funky fresh. Like this is trying something new.
Yeah.
And I think I feel a little bit that way about Loki too. Like this season 2 of Loki was like genuinely a very good season of television. And it made me have feelings about Loki, which I like genuinely didn't think was possible because like Loki is, like 2014 Tumblr catnip, right? Like he was the bad boy to end all bad boys.
Oh
and
my
like,
gosh.
Listen, Tom Hiddleston, I get it. But I never quite was like crazy about Loki, like as a character.
Your cup of tea.
It was my cup of tea. Okay. Like I enjoyed the Thor movies, but like I enjoy like Loki and Thor is like sort of siblinghood, friendship. Like they're a complicated dynamic and stuff. But like I was not like having feelings about Loki. But the TV show, especially the second season, like made me have feelings about Loki. But I think that like it's funny, and I sort of want to, obviously we'll get into the Penguin, but I also want to sort of talk about the Tumblr sentiment for each of these shows, because I'm kind of curious what you saw. I think that the episode of Agatha All Along that was focused on Patti LuPone's character, the sort of time-slipping episode, I thought was a fantastic episode of television. Like, I thought it was just, like, inventive and interesting and really well performed. I mean, all the performances throughout the show were fantastic. And the rest of the show I thought was, like, yeah, like a fun romp. But it's interesting because it got to the end of it and I was like, I should be losing my fucking mind over this show. It is everything I love. It's witchy stuff. It's queer stuff. It's like got a sort of almost video game feel to it. Like it's got, you know, sort of toxic mentor-mentee relationship, which is like one of my favorites. And something I've really been wanting to see with like an older woman and a younger man, because so often it's like the old gruff guy and the young, you know, spunky teenage girl, which I also adore. But like I've been wanting to see the reverse. And I just like, I liked the show. You know, I really liked it.
Yeah.
And then on the DC side, I have seen some of the Zack Snyder movies. I obviously watched all the Christopher Nolan movies, and that I think we can all agree completely redefined comic book movies entirely. Like Christopher Nolan's Batman and Iron Man obviously like just like completely changed the game for comic book movies. And then I think Zack Snyder tried to carry on that legacy with varying degrees of success. And I think Matt Reeves is having a better go of it. I enjoyed the Batman. I thought it was quite long, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. And I've heard amazing things about the Harley Quinn animated series, but like you, I've not actually watched any of the animated stuff. But it's funny, I've in the last 5 years, I've probably read more DC comics than I've read Marvel comics, because one of my best friends, Megan Fitzmartin, writes for DC. And so like I always read all of her comics. She is the reason that Tim Drake is bisexual. It's amazing. And so so I kind of went into the Penguin being like, again, like we like try to sort of watch like all the major, you know, franchise things. Like we're going to watch the new Dune show, right? And I just like, I lost my mind over it. And I think that it's because like Lauren LaFranc, is that the showrunner's name? I think that she was just like, she was making a TV show that happened to be taking place in the DC universe. Yes. Versus making a Marvel TV show, you know? And I think the interesting thing for me, and I'm curious what you've seen, I think I've seen a lot more people going crazy over Agatha All Along on Tumblr and basically nobody talking about the Penguin.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And it feels like Agatha All Along was written for the fans. And like it was written with the fans in mind, with fanfic in mind, with, you know, even I was even going to say like, you know, how much do we think that Tumblr as a platform influenced Agatha All Along as a series? I would say there's definitely at least some influence in there, at least from, you know, the size and impact of the MCU fandom on Tumblr. Yeah. But yeah, people were going wild over Agatha All Along, and the Penguin, you know, definitely some great gift sets of, her name is Christina
Milioti, who plays Sophia.
Who is one of the most beautiful people in the world, and just
unbelievably hot in this show.
Wow, the feelings. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be like I would let you murder me.
But maybe though.
But like, you know, if I'm gonna be murdered by like a mob boss, if I'm in a situation where a mob boss is gonna murder me, I know who I would pick.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, okay, so I watched Penguin week to week. You watched the Penguin all at once. What did you think? What was your big takeaway? Other than Christina Milioti being incredibly hot.
I mean, other than me like actively the like smoky eyeliner look that she did,
all of the costumes.
Like with her with when she had like her big like jackets. Oh my god, like smoke show. But anyway, other than that, which was obviously a major takeaway, but not my only takeaway. I really enjoyed it. I loved the mentor-mentee relationship. I really have been enjoying as a theme, like as a I don't know, continuation of these universes, these like doing character-based spin-offs of villains or of anti-heroes, especially showing these complex characters and how they became who they became, and the fact that they're not just purely evil. I also just think it's so kind of like sweet how Oz is both so hard and so soft.
Yes.
Like, as a human, like, he, you know, is obviously this, like, hardened, like, criminal and murderer who is, you know, he's a villain. He's a bad person.
Yeah.
But he also kind of, like, adopts this, like, wayward, you know, kid and is, like, giving him advice, which, I mean, which ended, obviously, not great. Wasn't stoked.
So many things to say about that.
About that, but I literally was writing down like I also like the chosen family aspect in general of kind of the show, and how, like, I don't know, I feel like chosen family tends to align often with these anti-hero type shows, or these like outskirts, or shows about anyone on the outskirts of society in any way, and like how you do end up with this chosen family. But I literally was writing down like quotes from the Penguin, like I'm like, this chose for, like, it's like an inspirational speech, like he said, like, at one point, how's anyone supposed to know your worth unless you tell them? And at another point he goes, like, you can take up space. And I was like, oh, but thank you.
Go off, Oz. Yes.
You're so right. You know what? Thank you. I will take up space. Like, why am I getting like inspirational, like advice from the Penguin right now? So overall, I enjoyed it significantly more than I enjoyed Agatha All Along. As you said, Agatha was a fun romp. It felt like fan fiction come to life.
Totally.
Which I loved. And the acting was impeccable. Everyone did great. I think it was, for what it was exactly what it was intended to be. And
yes,
it did that. And it was very successful in doing that. And it was great. And I will watch it next season. And Catherine Hahn is a legend. I think, like, in terms of quality of not even good. Yeah. I would say, like, in terms of the quality of the show, like the storytelling, the Penguin was just an impeccably done show. Like, it felt like almost like a limited series, like, you know,
I mean,
like
it was basically
quality wise. Like, will they be doing a second season?
I don't
feel
think
like
so.
I kind of was hoping, so it was a limited.
I think it's supposed to be a lead into the Batman too.
Got it. That makes, you know what, that makes a lot of sense.
I'm not positive on that though.
What are your thoughts on the ending of the Penguin?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, first of all, +1 to everything you said. Like, I think the thing that really struck me when all was said and done, and sort of, using these two things as a comparison point, I think that, and I think using also, like, what wasn't working about some of the DC movies of the last 10 years is that, like, they sort of felt like playing it safe a little bit, you know? And I think that that's something that a lot of storytelling has done over the last 10 years. And it's like, you know, if you've ever picked up a comic, you know that the weirdest shit goes on all the time. And, like, I was so sort of amazed and intrigued by the way that the Penguin went there. Like, you know, and I think in a way where I'm like, Tumblr must know about this. Like, Tumblr has to know, like, that this is happening, because, like, you have Sofia Falcone, / Sofia Gigante, who is, like, truly just like mass murder. Like, she's just mass murdering people. And it's like, and I'm still like, you go, girl boss, like, you go.
Well, they started it, you know?
Yeah. They started it. And, like, and also, I mean, like, you know, like, I feel like so often Tumblr's talking about, like, like, the ways in which, you know, women's mental health is shown on TV and that kind of stuff. And it's like, Sophia is a woman who's basically gaslit and framed and called crazy, and then has such severe PTSD from being institutionalized that she straight up just becomes a mass murderer. And so it's like, she is both the victim of sort of, you know, people putting on female hysteria on her, and also she is, like, legitimately a crazy murderer. And the way that they showed all of that, I thought was so powerful. And then, like, you have someone like Oz, who is both, like, very hard and very soft, and, like, they went there in terms of, like, yes, he does have kind of a weird psychosexual obsession with his mother. Like, they said that with their full chest.
Yep.
And, like, I've never seen that on TV before. I was astounded.
The
last
him,
scene,
like, oh my.
Like
like him in the hospital with the "tell me you're proud of me." Like I like it was just I was like I'm like, yes, I'm sad, but I'm also so uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable. And it's like yeah, to just totally spoil for people who like may not believe that I'm serious when I say that they fully made this explicit text. Like the whole show, you think that he's sort of this like mama's boy. He's like doing everything for his mom. It's like his one soft spot and stuff. And then there's sort of this turn where you realize like, oh, like he won't even sort of back down from his goals even to save her, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the very end, like he literally like hires the sex worker that he has, you know, an ongoing customer sex worker relationship with to dress up as his mother and dance with him and like tell him that she's proud of him, and then presumably to go and have sex with him while dressed as his mother. And it's just like, it's so crazy.
Lauren, do you want to know the wildest thing? And I'm just sitting here thinking about my lack of attention to detail as you say this. I did not catch that it was the sex worker dressed up as his mother. I thought that he had his mother fake a stroke so that she would be safe, and that final scene was him with his mother.
Oh my God. I mean, that would have been a wild twist too. But no, she's fully catatonic at the end of it.
She's okay. Wow. Yep.
Yeah, no, that was Eve.
I honestly don't know which one would have been more messed up. Frankly.
No, I honestly don't know either.
Yeah.
So that shocked me about the ending. And then of course, Vic. And like, I mean, if you listen to the show regularly, you know that like, I think when I first started talking about the show, I was like, I'm so scared for him. And yeah. I got fooled. And like, I made a post that I'll reblog to the Dashboard Diaries Tumblr on my own Tumblr about this, about just like, this is how you do a villain story. Like you get because of his inspirational speeches of like, take up space. Like, don't let anybody tell you, you know, don't let anybody grind you under their boot, basically. You forget. You start to forget that the first thing that you saw of this man was him killing somebody in cold blood. You forget that he's the Penguin. And you start to sort of root for him a little bit in the way that you want to in like anti-hero or sort of villain stories. And then what he does to Vic, it's just sort of like, oh, right, this guy is the devil. He's like literally the devil. I don't know. What was your reaction? My jaw was like literally, like my mouth was literally open.
The whole time that he was doing it, that he was like choking him, I was like, he's not going to fully kill him though.
Right.
He's going to like
something's going to happen.
Pass out, and then he's going to bring him somewhere. He's going to go bring him to where I presumably thought the mom was.
Yeah.
You know, the secret place where everyone's still alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was. And then like when he like looked at Vic's ID like and license and just tossed it in the water, I was like, if he had put it in his pocket as like an "I'm evil, but I'm gonna keep,"
but I have some sentiment,
and he just tossed.
Well, yeah. And then I saw a Tumblr post that someone was like having him toss it into the same water that took Vic's family, and I was like, exactly.
Oh my God!
I made that exact face when I saw that Tumblr post.
Wow. I mean, incredibly done show, very honestly told story.
Yes.
Which is why it was so good.
Yes.
You know, the Penguin is not a good character. Like that would not track for him to, have this soft spot because any soft spot, as we have learned, is something that can be exploited, you know?
But God, the kid who played Vic, I'm forgetting now the actor's name, but I cannot wait to see him in something. He was so good. And like you said, like career-making performances, like this feels like he's been in other stuff, but this feels like it's going to be like his real breakout. So like I'm really, really excited to see what he does next because I think he's really talented.
It was very well done. I enjoyed both shows for very different reasons.
Yeah.
I watched The Penguin first and then Agatha All Along, and I'm glad I did it that way.
Yeah, Agatha All Along is like a good palate cleanser, I feel like.
Exactly. And speaking of palate cleansers, should we dive into our archives?
Let's do it.
And see what we had going on this time, however many years ago. What were you posting about, Lauren?
So I went back to 2016 because obviously November 2016, this month has been very reminiscent.
Similar month.
Of that. And, just speaking of reminiscent things, the second one I put in here, one of them is just a screenshot of 2 tweets. The first one says, to the tune of Eleanor Rigby, and I'm going to sing this for you to the tune of Eleanor Rigby. Dog in a trench coat, getting promoted at work, but then sheds his disguise. Canaan surprise. And then somebody responds with, boss of the office, looks at the dog and then nods when he sees what he did. He has 3 kids. And it's just like...
incredible.
This is,
nonsense.
To me, utter beautiful nonsense. And I think a perfect encapsulation of like when Twitter was good. And, to obviously Tumblr, my one and only, my true love. But like, I think one of the things I love about Tumblr is that it has had a very sort of consistent experience for the 15 years that I've been on it, right? And it's like, I've weathered these storms with it and, gone through different phases with it and whatever. But like, I've always been there and I've sort of had a very, it's like, it's home, right? Mm-hmm. But like, sometimes you want to go to like your friend's party where you don't know a lot of people, but you have a good time,
Yeah.
And that's what Twitter was for a while. And it obviously has not been that for many years now. And this week, I got back into Blue Sky after starting an account a year ago and then never looking at it again. And it's got a little bit of that juice. It's got a little bit of the like, it's a party at your friend's house where you don't know a lot of people, but like the vibes are good. And so this just like sharing this from my archive felt like a hopefully a good portent of things to come. And then the other one that I shared is a post that like I literally did not remember at all, but just because this is the Corn podcast.
Oh, we love Corn.
It is a post from Neutral Dank Hotel, which is a fucking great blog name, that says, you eats 100 ears of corn in 2 hours. I am the Corn King. I cannot be outcorned. Me eats 101 ears of corn in 10 minutes. Just another day in the cornfields. And then 10-inch Flaccid, another good name, responds with, what? Neutral Dank Hotel says, I don't know. I woke up at 6 a.m., wrote this, and went back to sleep. And then 10-inch Flaccid responds, I hope you're okay. And I thought that was a good corn post to share.
This absolutely fantastic corn post. I love it so much. It's going into the Corb archives.
Good.
And
good.
I will definitely be reblogging this. This is very good. I'm glad that the rest of the internet is also weird, or not. Yes, the rest of the internet is also weird. The rest of the internet is also in on this. The corn.
The corn.
They're on the corn cob for lack of a better. I feel like the more that I talk about corn, the more that I hear about corn. I hear anyway. There was something in there. I think
you got there.
Anyway, that was a great corn post.
So what about you? What do you have from the archives?
I have a post from 10 years ago. No, 10 years ago. I reblogged it in November 2014. I feel like it aligns very well with what we just talked about on this episode. It's from user Alfombro, and it's one of those like my e-cards that were so popular, those memes that were so popular in like the early aughts and like 2010s, where it's like a person in very like retro like 1950s garb next to a quote of some kind that is often a little lewd, a little sassy. And this one's a woman holding a red rose, and it says, sorry I missed church. I was busy practicing witchcraft and becoming a lesbian. Which
so good
is just an Agatha All Along post.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thankfully, frankly, gee. Just an Agatha All Along post, frankly.
Absolutely. We got there.
But yeah, I saw this and I was actually shocked at how perfectly it aligns with what we're talking about.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah. That's so good.
But before we log off for the day, for the month, what has you in your feels at the moment, Lauren?
So I mentioned it up top, and I promise I will keep this short. Dr. Odyssey on ABC. I am a 911 enjoyer and have been watching Dr. Odyssey sort of after 911. And now I'm thinking, did I say this last time in my feels corner? I may have, but I'm just re-upping my Dr. Odyssey fandom.
You're still feeling
It is an inexplicably bizarre show. It's 3 doctors on a cruise ship dealing with, kind of like classic procedural stuff. But they have such extreme throuple energy, these 3. And right. If I can spoil just a little bit of Dr. Odyssey, it's only had 7 episodes. In episode 6, they fully have a threesome. This is network television.
Incredible.
And it's an incredibly dumb show in all of the best ways. Everybody's committed to the bit. And it's just like, it's bringing me a lot of joy right now. What about you? What's got you in your feels?
Well, first off, I am adding Dr. Odyssey to the queue. That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And what has me in my feels right now is Shrinking. Do you watch
Yes,
Shrinking?
I do.
I love the show. For those of you who are listening who don't watch or haven't heard of it, Shrinking is a show on Apple TV. It is starring Jason Segel and Harrison Ford, Jessica Williams, great cast, about a like small therapy practice in LA. And like these therapists, you know, they're a bit unorthodox in the way that they approach therapy, and they kind of befriend their patients. But yeah, it's just a very like sweet, wholesome sitcom, and you know, you feel like, you know, definitely some tender like tearjerker moments. I would say it's a dramedy series more than a sitcom. Yeah. And yeah, it's season 2 is about halfway through right now. I've been really enjoying the show, and I think, you know, like especially, I don't know, I think it's important to portray therapy and, you know, just in general in pop culture in this light. I hope that, you know, viewers have decided perhaps that they might go to therapy as a result of watching the show. You know, I've been enjoying it. But there was something that happened the last couple episodes that I wasn't a huge fan of, especially because it's a show about therapy. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. It's actually like a little bit of a controversial issue, so we can always cut this if we're not feeling it. But there is a couple in the show who they got married in the last season. And
I am completely with you on this. Keep going, but I'm completely with you.
Okay. I'm so glad you know. I'm so glad you know where I'm going with this, and that you feel the same, because I saw this and I was like, this feels so unaligned with the rest of the show.
Yep.
So essentially what happens is there's this couple and they are not aligned on their views of if they want to have children or not. One of the people in the relationship wants to have a child, the other does not. This was something that was established before they got married, and the person who does want kids says, you know, I know that, you know, my partner, my husband doesn't want kids, so, you know, I'd rather be with him. And they both agreed on this. And in this season, the topic comes up because one of their friends adopts a kid. And so their friend suggests, you know, I can connect you with my adoption agency. And the partner who wants to have a child brings it up and essentially pressures his partner into, and springs this meeting with an adoption agent on his partner. And all of their friends, when the partner who doesn't want kids goes and asks for advice, say, they essentially dismiss his, reservations and just say, no. I think there's a line that says when one person in a relationship wants a kid and the other doesn't, the one who wants a kid always wins, or something like that. And I was kind of flabbergasted by the way that this was portrayed, and just, I don't know. Yeah, I did not like this, and I'm not enjoying this plot line. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's not okay.
I am 1,000% with you. I thought this was really bizarre for this show. And the season's not over yet, right? So it's I've sort of been I'm just gonna I'm gonna trust, I'm gonna assume the best, and I'm gonna see where this goes. Right? But yeah, I really didn't like the way that the friends responded, because it's the only people who should be having kids are either individual people or couples or thruples or whatever set of people who all really want children. Yeah. Being a parent isn't something that you can just it shouldn't be something that you just do. Right? I was very, very bothered by it. And also it's if you want a child and you're getting married and you have the expectation in the back of your mind that your partner's going to change their mind, that's a shitty thing to do to your partner. Yeah. And same thing if you don't want kids and you're expecting your partner to just be okay and eventually change their mind and not want kids either, that's also a shitty thing to do. You need to be incredibly, incredibly honest about, I thought this was a really weird misstep for this show.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as you said, the season's not over. I am hoping that it goes in a different direction and surprises us. It does kind of feel like the direction they're going is person who doesn't want a kid, falls in love with child and is amazed at, the fact that he, wanted a kid all along.
Yeah.
And And it just kind of bums me out because I'm like, oh, I've seen this. And every other, I feel like a consistent narrative that we see in entertainment is someone who doesn't want children will either change their mind or be sad and like alone and lonely. It feels like there's no in between where it's like, maybe this isn't right for me and we can be a couple who doesn't, I very much think having a child is first off something that you unequivocally need to be on the same page about with your partner and cannot go into with anything but 100% commitment because it is a lifelong 100% commitment. And kids know when they're not wanted or when they're raised in like an environment like that. And I just don't, And it, especially when it's a show about therapists.
Yeah.
That shocked me too. Like these are therapists saying, it'll work out. You want a kid instead of, I don't know, validating his emotions and discuss it. Like, yeah.
I'm very curious to see where it goes.
Even boil it down to he's having a conversation in a scene and someone is talking about the way that he the character that doesn't want kids talks, and they're like, oh yeah, he always talks about himself, like, does this look good on me, or would a kid look good on me? Like, I feel like it's boiling it down to, oh, it just doesn't like jive with my vibe, instead of this is a major life choice that, they just are making his change of mind seem very simple. Anyway, I feel like I'm going in circles here, but it did definitely frustrate me, and I'm glad that you also like picked up on it and were happy about it. Hopefully, that was kind of a common POV. But.
And hopefully, Harrison Ford's character was not there in that particular conversation. So I'm kind of curious to see, like, maybe at a certain point the next time they have this conversation, he'll be there and he'll be like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, he should not have a kid if he does not want to have a kid. Because Harrison Ford's relationship with his daughter is like very complicated in this show. And so that's my hope, is that like something is going to come of this that is interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And same with there's Jessica Williams her character has a challenging relationship with her mom.
Yeah.
And and they're also showing that. So it's really interesting how they're showing these like challenging parental relationships and also like on the other hand kind of seemingly forcing this parental relationship. But I'm gonna say I will hopefully it goes in a different direction. I mean like there's still a few more episodes left.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. And with that, I'm Cher McAnelly, and you can find me at overshares.tumblr.com.
I'm Lauren Shippen, and you can find me at thelauren.tumblr.com.
This has been Dashboard Diaries, and
may your anons always be loving,
your dash always refreshed,
your gifts always be loading,
and your ships always canon.
May the fix you're reading always be finished,
and the answers you seek always in the reblogs.
Thanks for scrolling with us.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.